What exactly is a short sale?
So a short sale situation, it's a real estate transaction, right? Where the estimated proceeds from sale are going to be insufficient to cover the homeowner's mortgage liens and closing costs. So everyone's probably heard the term an underwater house or underwater mortgage. Another common industry term is upside down. And basically what it's referring to is a property that is not worth what the homeowner owes on
Got
it.
it.
And what happens in the short sale in a regular transaction, the homeowner would have to cut a check at closing, right? They'd have
Mhm.
to bring the difference themselves to closing. In a short sale, the bank eats the difference. So my clients don't have to bring that check. They get to break even when they should be spending money.
Doesn't sound like a bad deal.
No.
So, one of the other misconceptions I hear a lot is I might ask a client, a buyer, or a seller, or just the general public, if they're familiar with what a short sale is. And they say, yes, of course, it's just like a foreclosure.
Yeah, no. I mean, they're related but completely different at the same time. So most of my clients are in some stage of foreclosure because they're not paying their mortgage. They're experiencing distress. They fall behind their mortgage, and the mortgage company starts foreclosure. What a foreclosure is, it's the mortgage company enforcing their rights under the note mortgage. They're basically initiating a legal proceeding to get a judge's order to sell the house at a sheriff's sale. And at that sheriff's sale, the mortgage company uses the proceeds to reimburse them for the loss that incurred by the homeowner not paying their mortgage. Right? The short sale is a voluntary transaction. Right? The short sale is the homeowner saying to themselves, I'm in trouble. I need to get rid of this house, and they're selling it for the most part on their own terms, moving on their own terms. The bank has to approve the price, but
Mhm.
the homeowner gets to avoid foreclosure by doing the short sale, and that's one of the main benefits.
Got it. Fantastic. So, like I said, what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about what a short sale means for a buyer and what it means for sellers. So, now we'll dig into the sellers a bit because this is probably what is going to be more of an experience, and somebody might be doing a little bit more research on is if you happen to be one of those individuals that has a financial hardship and you need help, a short sale might be the best avenue for you. You can talk to this, Bill. I know as agents here, we really often see a short sale as an area where we can really help a seller out of a difficult situation. Sometimes these are some rather sad stories, but doesn't it all start with a seller having a financial hardship or homeowner, I should say?
Sure. I mean, look, there's many different hardships out there. I mean, things happen to people. I mean, obviously, the present situation aside, people go through divorces, people lose jobs, people lose overtimes, businesses fail, people pass away. These are all pretty substantial hardships that most people, if they end up going through them, they're not going to be able to keep their primary residence or even in a second home. So, yeah, typically when someone's looking to do a short sale, they've experienced some sort of negative financial or life changing event.
Got it. And is there a quick answer to the pros and cons of going the route of a short sale versus going through foreclosure or maybe even a bankruptcy?
Well, sure. I mean, the benefit of doing the short sale over the foreclosure, I guess even in the bankruptcy too, it's probably the most lenient on your credit, or it's probably easier to recover from a
Mhm.
short sale than a foreclosure or a bankruptcy. Also, the danger of letting your house go to foreclosure or mailing your keys back, as a lot of homeowners like to say, is if the bank forecloses and it goes to sheriff sale. If your home is in fact underwater, there's going to be a balance owed after the foreclosure is finalized. The scary part about foreclosure is that the mortgage company in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, where I'm licensed to practice law, the mortgage company can sue the homeowner for that balance. It's called a deficiency lawsuit. And while they're not common, the threat of it is still very real. And if it were to happen to a homeowner, it would be a substantial life changing event. Uh, bankruptcy, um, bankruptcy gets rid of the mortgage debt, right? But it doesn't get rid of the house, right? So it does protect the homeowner from that deficiency suit, but it doesn't get rid of the property. And in a lot of cases, if the homeowners abandon the property, they're still going to need to do the short sale anyway, even after the bankruptcy, just to
Interesting.
accelerate the disposition of it.
Interesting. Got it.
And
Um,
just sorry, not to cut you off, Adam,
no, go
it's
ahead. Go ahead.
important. When you're doing a short sale, you're going to get something in writing stating that the bank's forgiving that deficiency. And that's really what you want, that piece of paper in your hand saying we forego the right to pursue the collection of any balance.
Interesting. Okay. So, is there any reason why a homeowner that is behind on their mortgage shouldn't try the short sale route first before just allowing the house to go to foreclosure?
Except in extremely rare circumstances, no.
No.
Almost always going to be in their best benefit to do the short sale.
So, given that, what is the advantage of using an attorney to negotiate the short sale for you at the bank as opposed to just trying to do it on your own? Or I know there's real estate agents that try to say that they'll do this, and there's
Sure.
other third party companies who are not attorneys nor real estate agents that try and, service these as well.
Three big reasons why that I preach on using a law firm or an attorney to help you with your short sales. Number one is the time factor, right? I mentioned earlier most of our short sales are done in 4 months, but you don't understand how much, well, you do, but the public may not understand how much work goes into that 4 months.
Hmm.
You literally have to be chained to your desk. You can't be out showing houses. If you're a homeowner, you can't be out grocery shopping. You have to be at your desk waiting for that bank to call. And if they're not calling you, you need to be calling them. And these phone calls can take an hour or more of sitting on hold and going through the steps and updating, talking to different people. So an agent's time is much better spent showing houses and getting buyers and getting listings, right? You're not,
Sure.
agents aren't getting paid extra to sit in their office and be chained to the desk. Homeowners, I mean, they should be at work, or they should be doing something better than sitting on hold with a bank. They also, a lot of homeowners may not have the technology needed to deal with the mortgage companies. I mean, you're going to need high speed scanners. You're going to need big printers, copy machines, because you're scanning and sending hundreds of pages to the bank. Um, Another major benefit is, especially for agents, is you avoid the unauthorized practice of law, right?
Hmm.
As an agent, doing a short sale doesn't necessarily mean you're acting like a lawyer, but your client's going to have questions for you. They're going to ask you, Adam, should I keep paying my mortgage? Adam, am I going to owe
Yes.
the bank any money? Adam, is the IRS going to try and tax me on it?
Yeah.
Even if you're 100% certain you know the answers to those questions, you shouldn't be answering them, because
Correct.
those are attorney questions and accounting questions. And realtors who try to answer those, even correctly, are subjecting themselves to the unauthorized practice of law, which could subject themselves again to liability. Um, and the biggest reason I think to use law firms for handling your short sales, at least when it comes to us, is that I'm free. There is no charge to the realtor. There's no charge to the distressed homeowner. I don't ask the buyer to pay a processing fee. I get paid by the seller's short sale mortgage company, by the short sale lender. And I only get paid if we go to closing.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was thinking as you were explaining that. If I were a homeowner or a seller, I'd be thinking, well, great, I'm hearing how much time you spend, but how do you get paid? So it's not going to cost the seller a dime.
No,
Um, so before that, is the process correct to for a seller to contact you first? I mean, is there some type of interview or consultation to say, hey, you know what, you have the type of hardship that might qualify for a short sale. We should, proceed with this. Or are you able to tell them, you know what, it seems like you're still employed, you make enough income. There's no sense in even following this. Is that something that you can initially give?
yeah, yeah. I mean, typically, once if a homeowner finds me online, or if an agent refers a homeowner to me and they want the consultation, again, it's free, right? So take advantage of it. And yeah, I mean, I'll go over their hardship. I'll go over the legal issues. Whether to pay their mortgage if they're still current.
Hmm.
I talk about the deficiency. I talk about the IRS tax issue. I kind of review their hardship to see how strong it may be. So yeah, I mean, it's a good introduction to me, just letting them know that we know what we're doing here, and we're here to help you in your time of need, for sure.
Great. And I will add just through my experience that, one of the things that we like working with a firm like yours is just the experience level.
Sure,
You've probably dealt with a large lender like Wells Fargo, for example, hundreds, if not thousands of times,
absolutely.
where any homeowner, it's going to be their first time, very
Yeah,
likely, dealing with this process. So that, even though they're not paying for that, experience level is just invaluable. Um, with that said, I'll also add too that the same thing on the real estate agent side. When we list a short sale, I will often have a seller, analyze the listing agreement, looking through the commission fee and the charges, and question all of them about the commission fee that they want to pay. But the reality is, right, is that same way with your fee, their lender is going to be covering that cost, and it's not going to cost the seller a dime.
correct. Yeah, in a short sale, the seller's mortgage company is going to cover what they believe to be necessary closing costs. So obviously they're paying the realtors, because they require realtors to be involved in the short sale. So they're paying the realtors commission, and it's almost always going to be 6%. They're paying the attorney, because the attorney's doing the transaction, and
Mhm.
then they'll pay real estate taxes, and most of the time municipal water, municipal sewer, and so sometimes they'll pay other liens as well. But yeah, so the realtor's fees are covered as well.
Perfect. And could you give us a quick example of we keep talking about a financial hardship, and I heard you
Sure.
earlier talk a little bit about divorce and maybe unemployment. I mean, what's your typical financial hardship?
Um, Typical financial hardship is going to be the ones I see the most are death of a borrower. So, a spouse
Mhm.
dies, um, or divorce. Divorce is a big one. Look, when my parents got divorced 25 years ago, you sold all the real estate, you split the money, and you moved on your separate ways. It doesn't seem like that's the way of the world anymore. Now people are
Mhm.
getting divorced and they're being forced into a short sale situation. So divorce is a big one too, because just like death, you're essentially going from one income to two. Two incomes to one, right?
Yeah.
Um, Job loss, business failure, and reduction of income are the other real big ones. A police officer who loses overtime, a guy who goes out and starts his own business selling stuff on eBay and it fails. These are typical things that we'll see, but it doesn't mean it's all encompassing. I mean, I have situations where I have clients who have, they're still working, they're still making the same money, but their second investment property, the tenant stopped paying, destroyed the house, and moved out. Now, that's not as strong a hardship as, say, death or divorce, but it's something we've worked with in the past successfully.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And I'll add to that too that, in talking about experience level, I see where a homeowner sometimes they might be in a very difficult situation because they did lose a spouse and now they're dealing with the grief of that. And on top of it, they can't make their mortgage payment. And now they're going to try and go to Wells Fargo or any other big bank and negotiate this on their own. I don't want to keep beating the dead horse, but this is why you should have a professional take care of this for you. And it's not going to cost you any more money.
No,
Um,
I completely agree. I mean, and let's not forget, it's not just Wells Fargo.
right.
Typically there's second mortgages, home equity lines of credit, there's child support judgments, there's judgments for doctor's bills, there's judgments for credit cards, there's IRS liens, there's New Jersey state tax liens. Each of these has a different procedure and different parameters for being settled. And if you don't know them, you're not going to get it done.
And so that's all part of it. If I had, for example, what we call a first and a second, you have your primary mortgage and maybe you have a home equity line of credit or some other type of debt. This is all part of that process, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you need to know how and when to call the second mortgage company. You need to know what to say to them. You need to know how much money they're typically going to get. And while to me that's a pretty routine procedure, to a homeowner it's got to be another planet.
Absolutely. So I'm going to throw one curveball at you because we run into this a few times recently
Sure.
where we see typically an elderly homeowner who got a reverse mortgage and what we call they've actually outlived the reverse mortgage and they
Okay.
cannot pay it back. Is that something that can fit into a short sale situation?
So we've done plenty of short sales on reverse mortgages. They are, from my standpoint, no different than any other real estate. It's just the process is exactly the same.
Okay.
Um, Paperwork, it's following up with phone calls, it's getting the closing. It's really to us no different than a non-reverse mortgage short sale.
Perfect. And if I'm a homeowner and I'm in this situation, I have a hardship and I'm considering going down the road of a short sale, what are the first steps? Is that, not paying my mortgage payment, calling you, calling the real estate agent, getting it on the market? If I wanted to be proactive in this, what should the first step be?
I mean, you definitely call an agent or call me. Call you, call me, one or the other. I mean,
Mhm.
those are because we're going to put each other in contact. We're going to, I'm going to make sure they contact you and vice versa,
Mhm.
because we both play integral roles, right? They can't do the short sale without you because you got to put it on the market and sell it, and they shouldn't be doing the short sale without me because I need to give them the advice they need to move forward. So it doesn't make a difference who they call first, but as long as they have both professionals lined up, I think they should do that before doing anything else. They should do that before even calling their own mortgage company. You can't trust your mortgage company. I mean, you just can't. I mean, if you call your mortgage company and you're still paying your mortgage, and you say to them, "Hey, look, quarantine and this present situation aside, if you call your mortgage company and say, 'I lost my job, what do I do? I need help,' they're going to look at your file. They're going to say, 'Well, sir, you're still paying your mortgage. When you can't pay it anymore, call us back.'" Well, the homeowner is going to read between the lines, default on the mortgage, and then call the mortgage company for help, and they're going to get the runaround from the mortgage company. They're going to try doing it themselves. And then 7 months later, when they're 7 months behind on payments, now they're calling me and you. They would have been much better off calling us from the start rather than their mortgage company.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've had experiences before where we've gotten that phone call, and I look it up on the sheriff auction website, and it's 2 weeks from sheriff auction.
Sure.
And, that happens sometimes. I'm sure it happens to you much more frequently. I assume there becomes a point in time where, there's no turning back, right?
Sure. I
Like,
mean, obviously, when there's a sheriff sale scheduled, and again, present situation, you don't see many anymore. But
right.
when there's a sheriff sale scheduled, it really makes my job near impossible to get done because at that point, the foreclosure is complete and or near completion, and the incentive to do the short sale for the mortgage company has dissipated, and it puts a time crunch on my office that a lot of times we just can't do. But um, we don't turn those clients down. We still try. It's just the chances of success are greatly reduced.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Um, so now, one of the things that we do hear about is that if your debt is forgiven and we're successful in this, and you short sell the property, now am I going to have to pay income taxes on that forgiven debt?
So the answer is maybe, but probably not. Um, Here's what happens. Whenever, forget short sales for a second, this is just an IRS law, right? The IRS considers canceled or forgiven debt to be income. So
Okay.
thinking outside of the short sale realm for a moment, if you owe your Visa card 15,000 and you can't pay them anymore and you settle with them for 5, right? That means they're canceling 10,000 in debt. According to the IRS, that is income to you, and you will get a 1099 for it,
Okay.
1099-C to be exact. The C would stand for cancellation of debt income, and the IRS would expect you to pay taxes on that $10,000 difference. Now let's look at mortgages, which are obviously usually a bigger difference.
Hmm.
If I have a client who owes Wells Fargo 200,000, we do a short sale for 150. The $50,000 difference is going to be canceled. My client's getting a 1099-C for 50,000. Now paying taxes on 50,000 could be pretty substantial, right? I could make the argument that I saved you 50 grand. So what, you owe the IRS 15. But if people don't have the 50 to give Wells Fargo, probably don't have the 15 for the IRS either. The
I
good
assume
news
so.
is, and the reason I said maybe but not likely to answer your question, is because the IRS realizes how unfair this rule is, and they provide giant loopholes to help you avoid it. I'll briefly mention what they are, but any particular homeowner who's more concerned than that or doesn't feel with certainty they'll qualify should talk to their tax professional because they're the ones dealing with the issue, not our firm.
Hmm.
The first exemption is called the Mortgage Forgiveness Debt Relief Act. The Mortgage Forgiveness Debt Relief Act is valid for debts canceled for the rest of this year. So come 2021, I can't promise this law will be in effect anymore, as it does have a prior history of expiration and extension. The Mortgage Forgiveness Debt Relief Act will cover a principal residence sale where the money that was borrowed was used for the property, right? So if you borrowed money from Wells Fargo, you bought your principal home, and then you did a short sale, you're covered. You don't have to pay tax on the difference.
Okay.
Second exemption is bankruptcy. Anytime debt is canceled in a bankruptcy, it's not taxable. So if I have a client who was in trouble with their debt, they filed a Chapter 7, eliminated all their debt, and then realized they need to get rid of the house too and do a short sale, they won't have to deal with the tax because the mortgage was canceled effectively in their Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And then the final exemption, which is also the most complex, is something known as insolvency. Insolvency is a financial term that indicates a person has more debt in their life than they do assets. We've all heard the term net worth before,
Hmm.
especially people who are very wealthy will brag, I'm worth, $12 billion. Right. Well, we want our clients to have a negative net worth, not negative 12 billion, but, negative 100,000 or so. The more insolvent they are, meaning the greater the difference between their debts and assets, the more likely they're going to be able to avoid paying tax on what the bank forgives. Um, I've done thousands and thousands of short sales, Adam. Maybe 5 or 10 of my clients have paid this tax,
Well, that's
and they
great
all
to hear.
deserve it.
That's great to hear. That's really good to hear because, again, I mean, if, like you said, if they can't afford to pay the mortgage, how are they going to afford to pay, these additional income taxes for the forgiven debt? So that's fantastic. Uh, Talking about good news, and, this is something I see is really exciting. I know it doesn't happen all the time, but I've seen it happen a few times where in a short sale situation, the seller has gotten their mortgage forgiven and they've actually walked away with a check.
Correct.
I think you call that relocation expenses. Is that correct?
Yeah, relocation incentive is the exact term
Okay.
that they use,
Okay.
and it's the bank's way. So it's a seller's mortgage company's way of saying thank you for doing a short sale and not walking away from the property, or it's their way of saying, here's some money to go relocate and start your future. Although I know you know as well as I do, those amounts have varied greatly
Hmm.
throughout the years. As of right now, the typical amount that homeowners will get is $3,000. It's typically only paid if they're occupying the property, so they
Hmm.
still need to be occupying it at the time of the settlement, and then the amount's typically $3,000.
So if you're listening to this, in our market right now, the average rental is $1,500. So that's literally your first and last month's rent, or your first month in security deposit gets you into that rent or that place that you have to go,
Sure.
right? I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, it's really it's really nice that the banks do it, because it really gives people this, the help they need to move on, when they do in fact grant it. Of course, it's never guaranteed, but when they do give it, it's a very nice thing to do.
no, yeah. I mean, it just to me, when I think about this, and I think that somebody's in a difficult situation, they get their mortgage forgiven, and they might actually walk away with enough money to get them into their wherever they're going, whether that be a rental or somewhere else. It gets them to where they need to go. To me, when that all works out, I know it doesn't work out every time. It's just fantastic. Um, Given that, one thing that we didn't talk about is we're talking about all the good news for a seller and why a seller might want to do this. Why would the bank participate in this versus just going through the foreclosure proceedings and taking ownership of the house?
Sure. I mean, look, the average foreclosure, the exact term, the exact amount, I forget. It's at least a year, if not more, especially in New Jersey. During that year, if the homeowner's not paying the mortgage, remember, the mortgage company's got to pay the real estate taxes, they got to pay the homeowner's insurance, and they got to pay their attorneys to foreclose. So you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars that it's going to cost the mortgage company to carry the property during the foreclosure. And then when the foreclosure is over, if it's not purchased by a third party at sheriff sale, it becomes an REO property, meaning the bank now owns it, and now
Hmm.
they have to sell it. And you never know what kind of turn the market's going to take. So a lot of times a mortgage company will feel it's in their best interest to liquidate the property. And that's exactly what the short sale allows them to do, to liquidate it and cut their losses. And a lot of loans, FHA loans, for example, have insurance on them.
Hmm.
So, the mortgage company is going to get reimbursed for their loss anyway. So a lot of the times the short sale is going to be preferential to them from a financial standpoint.
Makes sense. So last thing I'm going to ask, if I'm a seller, we briefly talked about this before. I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into not only how do we arrive at the best listing price to bring the
Sure.
house onto the market at, but how does the bank also arrive at their approved selling price?
So from a listing agent standpoint, the agents that I work with that close the most short sales are the ones who list and sell the property for the right amount, right? And their advice and my advice is to list it and sell it for what you feel is fair market value.
Hmm.
Don't accept offers that you feel are a waste of time or too low. List it and sell it for what it's worth. And maybe, listen, maybe you're wrong. Maybe you think the house is worth 250. You list it for 250 and you get no foot traffic. Well, you know what to do better than I do. If you're not getting foot traffic, you lower it.
Yep.
And maybe every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, whatever Adam thinks, I would trust him. Say, lower it, and you do that until you get a solid offer. And the agents who do that will close the most short sales. The agents who list it at 250 and then accept the first offer for 125 are going to complain the short sales never close and don't realize that it's their fault.
Mm.
The mortgage company, the seller's mortgage company, how they arrive at their accepted price. Well, we mentioned earlier they do a BPO or appraisal, right?
Correct.
Based on that amount, there's a discount or a percentage off of that they'll allow. Now, certain loan types, such as FHA mortgages, again, that number is known, right? So if I'm working on an FHA short sale and Bank of America appraises a house at, let's say, $100,000, I know, because it's an FHA loan, that Bank of America needs to net $88,000, right? Because
Yeah.
their typical rule is they need to net 88% of their appraised value.
Okay.
That's known. But if you're dealing with a mortgage with, say, TD Bank, where TD Bank actually owns that mortgage, and it's not FHA or VA or Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, TD Bank's never going to tell me what that number is. Right? That number is secret. It might be 81%, it might be 90%. You never really know the number. I think it's fair to say that, at least based in my experience, the numbers are typically somewhere in the 80s, no matter what kind of loan it is, whether
Okay.
it's Fannie, Freddie, FHA. It's typically going to fall in the 80s somewhere. Sure, you might get lucky and find some sort of, hedge fund that owns a million loans and they want to liquidate even less. But those loans are few and far between, because most are Fannie, Freddie, FHA, and VA.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I know the typical homeowner is not going to look this up, but when I was looking in the Fannie Mae guidelines, it actually describes a short sale as fair market value, right?
Right.
So it's good to know because, a lot of these homeowners, if they can't afford to pay their mortgage payment, sometimes they're not properly maintaining the home either. And, so I know that with your real estate contract for short sales, that it's a completely as is sale. So the seller's not responsible for making any repairs. The buyer's
Yeah.
going to take it in the condition they find it, correct?
Yeah. I mean, the transactions as is, a seller is not compelled to make any repairs whatsoever. Obviously the buyer's not compelled to accept the house either. If the buyer
Right.
does their home inspection and the foundation's cracked, you can't force the buyer to buy in those circumstances. So it's a fair option. It gives both parties, I believe, the best way to proceed.
Yeah, yeah. And if it's fair to say, usually we advise our sellers that you don't have to make any repairs, but I would put your best foot forward that if there's a buyer who's thinking about backing out because of a particular
Correct.
condition and you have the means to repair it, it may keep the deal together and proceed to getting this debt forgiven.
Yeah, I mean, look, in a perfect short sale, you list it, you sell it, I get it approved, we go to closing, homeowner gets 3 grand, pays nothing, right? I mean,
Right.
that's the ideal situation, and most of them are that way, but not all of them. I mean, there are situations where the parties have to chip in to make the deal work, and if everybody wants it bad enough, they'll get it done.
Fantastic. All right. So, before we jump into talking a little bit about the coronavirus and how that's affecting things now, is there anything that you have to add for homeowners or sellers or, anything that we missed?
The most important thing is call us first. Don't call the bank first, and that's going to come into play when we talk about coronavirus. It's so hard to avoid talking about it because it's completely taken over
Yeah.
our lives at the moment. But I really see parallels between this and the financial crisis from 12 years ago. And the crazy thing is, I'm still doing short sales. I'm still feeling the effect of the financial crisis from 12 years ago. Still doing short sales from 12 years ago. And I
Yeah.
think the current situation is going to be even worse.
Okay. Yeah, and that's, a lot of the stuff that we talked about already, at least in the near future, I don't see changing as far as the process of a short sale. But I did want to talk a little bit about the coronavirus and how that's affecting things. I've already seen an effect on it in some of the, transactions that we're handling.
Sure.
And, I'm sure you could communicate this, what right now, just in the process of a short sale, is it fair to say that things are just taking longer because the banks are, backed up and
Yeah.
inundated with other phone calls?
Well, I'm seeing three, at least initially, three big differences. One, you're right, they're taking a lot longer to process. Where it took an hour to talk to Select Portfolio Servicing, mortgage servicer before, it's now
Mhm.
taking 2 hours,
Yeah.
right? Because you got the normal hour that it would typically take, then you have 100,000 people calling asking for deferment or forbearance.
Right.
So they're taking a little bit longer, but they're still closing, which is good. That's one side effect that I'm seeing. Side effect number two, now everybody has a hardship, right?
Yeah, it's
Everybody's
true.
got a hardship now. Sometimes I talk to clients and I'm pulling at strings trying to find, you got to give me something, man. Give me a reason why you can't pay your mortgage. Now everybody's got one,
Yeah.
right? Nobody's working. Everybody's income is reduced for the most part. So now everybody's got a hardship, which is I think, going to make them a little easier to get approved. And then the third thing I'm seeing is all my sheriff sales are getting canceled. All these files where I was against these extreme time constraints, the sheriff sales are all getting canceled, which is buying me an indefinite amount of time. So those are some of the immediate changes I'm seeing. Although I anticipate over the next year that the number of short sales I see will probably increase at numbers that I can't even guess.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure that very well may become true. One of the things I was curious about is we know that recently, the governor in the state of New Jersey here, they came out with this 90-day grace period
Sure.
on mortgage payments. So does that mean that if I was in the process of going through a short sale, does the bank come back and say, hey, you know what, you're good now, we don't need to proceed with this because we're giving you 90 days?
I mean, hypothetically they could, but I haven't seen that scenario. I haven't seen that scenario yet. And I mean, again, and it's great that we have these programs. It's great that the 90-day grace period exists. It's great that mortgage companies are offering two terms homeowners are probably familiar with now, deferment and forbearance.
Hmm.
Um, but again, I think in the end, these programs are going to do a lot of harm as well. Drawing on parallels to the financial crisis, and again, reiterating why they should be contacting me or you first rather than their bank. You know, During the financial crisis, there was also programs like this. Maybe not the 90-day grace period, but there was forbearance and there was deferment and there was programs like HAMP, home affordable modification program, these ultimate great programs that the government came out with. And just like the ones that are out now, homeowners call and apply for them without really knowing what they're getting themselves into. And, 5, 6, 7 months later, they realize they've either not gotten the help they needed, their help was completely denied, or they did get the help and now they need even more. And what that gives rise to is people essentially realizing now they have to sell their home, which is why the short sales will increase.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, that's, obviously it's the first place that people go to is their home to sell in a time like this, whether they have equity and that's the only cash that they have and they have to sell it to cash out, or, now they have this debt and they don't have any equity and, that's the route of the short sale. Coronavirus aside, one of the things that makes me think of too is I hear you keep referencing the financial crisis.
Sure.
We've seen short sales happen even in the best of markets too. And for example,
Sure.
where we are in Atlantic and Cape May counties, the financial crisis, we'll call it '08. When we had the casinos close in 2014 in Atlantic City, that's
Yeah.
when we saw the most of our short sales because of all the
Yeah.
employment that
Remember.
was lost during that time.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. I mean, any crisis is going to give rise to situations like this. You're absolutely right. And just to harp on the 90-day grace period one last time, I can't speak for all mortgage companies, but Shell Point Mortgage Servicing,
Hmm.
they're making the homeowner pay all 3 payments back at the end of the 90-day period. So if your payments are $2,000 a month and you get the 90-day grace period, that means on the fourth month you owe $6,000 plus the $2,000 for that month, so $8,000. You're not going to have the $8,000
Yeah.
to make that payment.
No.
So what's going to happen is you're going to have to do a loan modification, and that's another interview we can do about how they don't really work so well. But the homeowners, it's only going to take so long for the homeowner to realize that's not the answer either, and then they'll be calling us for the short.
Yeah, yeah, and without going into a different topic, at the end of the day, the mortgage companies want to get paid, right? And that's
Yeah,
why, when they introduced this 90-day grace period, the mortgage company, some of them overnight increased their minimum credit scores and the minimum reserve account balance that they wanted buyers to have because,
yep.
naturally they want to get paid.
Yeah. I mean, look, none of us know the future here, but it doesn't look from where I'm sitting, it doesn't look good for the market.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, there is solutions out there, and short sales being one of them, and
Sure.
potentially one of the best solutions if you find yourself in this unfortunate circumstance.
Absolutely.
So, Bill, I appreciate it so much. Thanks for giving us this rundown and filling us in on everything short sale. Before I let you go, is there anything that we missed? And if not, what's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
Yeah. I mean, look, obviously this is about 40 minutes we've been talking. I can't go through 15 years of experience in 42 minutes. And
No.
every short sale is different. Every bank's different. Loan types are different. But again, that's just why it's super important for homeowners to contact us first so we
Hmm.
can guide them in the right way. But, look, I'm never going to push a homeowner into a certain option. I'm never going to say you have to do a short sale. My job as the attorney is to explain the pros and cons of all their options and let them select the one that's best for themselves. It just so happens that if they're calling me, 9 times out of 10, the best option they have is a short sale anyway. Best way to contact me is 856 261 5816. That is my cell phone. I know a lot of attorneys don't give their cell phones out to the general public. I do,
You put it
especially.
on this video now. You're gonna get the
Yeah, I
phone
mean,
calls.
listen, I've always done it my entire career. It's one of the reasons why I'm successful. I answer text messages, phone calls. A lot of times I'll schedule consultations over text. My office number, if you want something more formal, is 856 528 2012. If you Google the Sokol Firm, New Jersey, you'll get my website, you'll get my email. It's all there.
Perfect. And what we'll do is wherever this video ends up living or hosting, we'll put your website link and your office phone number just below it. So if anybody needs to get a hold of you, they can. And if not, if you choose to contact us first, we have a direct connection to introduce you to everybody at the Sokol Firm as well.
Yeah, now you can you have my email from my email
Yep.
signature, I'm sure. You can throw
Yep.
that in there.
Absolutely. Will do. Well, Bill, I appreciate it so much. It's been fantastic. Thanks again.
Yeah, Adam, pleasure, man. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Stay safe.
Yeah, you too.